On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Atrium Medical Center Foundation, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm so sorry I'm not with you to share this special evening, but business required me to be out of the country. At the Atrium Medical Center Foundation, our mission is to build healthier communities here in Southwest Ohio. We cannot do this without you. I first connected with the foundation more than 10 years ago when my company, Baker Concrete Construction, became part of the team building a new Atrium Medical Center. I saw firsthand how much this new hospital meant to this community and how much good the foundation accomplishes here. I wanted to be part of it. Thanks to thousands of generous donors, the last decade has been the most powerful for the foundation's growth. Today, our assets stand at close to $20 million. Under the leadership of Philip Holloman from Cintas, we just finished a campaign that raised nearly $1 million to put a mammography coach on the road and to bring a simulation training lab here to Atrium. As you heard earlier from the Bidwells, our current efforts focus on creating a better hospital experience for our elders. The new geriatric emergency unit will be a great help to seniors and their loved ones. Our special thanks to Bill Thornton for leading this campaign. The foundation is deeply grateful to every donor and volunteer for your support. Whether you join us at events like this one, give generously to campaigns, or establish your legacy through an endowment or estate gift, know that you are making a critical difference here in Southwest Ohio. The foundation was established 32 years ago in 1984, but this community's legacy of giving to the hospital goes back more than 100 years. Our hospital exists today thanks to the determination, commitment, and generosity of individuals and businesses who believe that better health care would improve lives. Now it's time to learn more about our remarkable history and the people who made it happen.
Acres Packaging Service, AK Steel, and Cohen Recycling are pleased to honor our founders and share the history of our hospital. This is a story of vision and leadership, of camaraderie and commitment. It's a story about how 3 early industrialists and 3 pioneering physicians came together to establish a much-needed community hospital. Over the next 100 years, that first hospital on the hill grew to become Atrium Medical Center, a 328-bed facility and the centerpiece of a 190-acre health, education, and research campus. We honor and celebrate this accomplishment tonight. In 1909, Armco founder George M. Verity came before Middletown's Businessmen's Club. He presented Chairman Paul Sorg and other local industrialists with a proposition. Armco wanted to work with the city to develop its potential. He put forth 7 much-needed civic improvements in education, housing, and recreation. Also on the list, the city's own public hospital, where Middletonians could receive world-class medical care without having to travel to Cincinnati or Dayton. Reorganized into the Middletown Civic Association, this group led the city in launching an ambitious and ultimately successful initiative known as Greater Middletown. In 1910, a special committee of city leaders selected a site for a hospital and planned a fundraising campaign. Prominent businessmen such as paper executives George Harvey and Colin Gardner Sr. supported the effort. A daunting challenge became even more so as the city experienced 2 devastating tragedies: a train collision in West Middletown in 1910 that injured 40, and a ravaging flood in 1913 that killed 300. Armco's infirmary and temporary hospital facilities set up in schoolhouses could not handle such a disaster. Both the train wreck and the flood underscored the fact that Middletown needed its own hospital. Paper magnate Colin Gardner Sr. was one of the most prominent members of Middletown's industrial elite.
He saw the need to make sure that Middletonians were taken care of. People that lived here, that worked here, that were part of this whole bigger community.
Both Gardner and his business partner George Harvey were strong believers in the Greater Middletown Initiative and staunchly supported the city's new hospital. In fact, George Harvey helped to acquire some of the land on which it was built. He knew firsthand about the need after a serious hunting accident in 1915.
They took him to Armco Mill Hospital because there wasn't anything else. And the original Dr. David Gerber worked on him. And I saw him years later at the charity ball. He and his wife were the honorary chairman. And I introduced myself as George Harvey's great-granddaughter. And he got out of the receiving line and took me over and sat me down and said, "I need to tell you what I did to your great-grandfather. I cleaned out as much buckshot as I could. I broke eggs and took the egg white and just put it in the open wound and then stretched the skin apart over it and prayed." He said I was written up in journals afterwards because my great-grandfather lived 40 or 50 years after that.
The nonprofit Middletown Hospital Association was incorporated in 1913. It took several years to raise the funds needed to buy land, build the new hospital, and purchase equipment. On March 5, 1917, Middletown Hospital opened its doors. It was the beginning of a new era in Middletown. When the Great Flu pandemic hit in 1918, the city was ready.
May 16, 1918, and I was born in the Middletown Hospital. The third baby born there, I think Jack Bauer, who was the doctor's wife, was first. She was a Seabold, lived on South Main Street. That was the beginning.
As the hospital became part of the community, the stewardship of the Verity, Gardner, and Harvey families ensured it would thrive.
All of our family has been always very involved in community events, as well as all the Harveys and the Gardners.
Well, the family always was interested in helping the community, and I think that really emanated from George M.
I think the values that George M. helped develop for Armco were something that resonated with my dad, and I think he felt that it was part of his responsibility to keep those values as a core part of the culture at Armco during his leadership.
Even before the hospital opened, George M.'s daughter, Sarah, organized a volunteer group of young women to raise funds and provide services for the needy.
My Aunt Sally evidently talked to her father about 3 years before the founding of the hospital and said that she wanted to start an auxiliary, and they called it the Daddy Verity Girls Club, which later became the Women's Auxiliary.
In 1916, Colin Gardner Jr. joined the first board of trustees of the Middletown Hospital Association. As treasurer and later chair, he was instrumental in raising funds for the hospital's first expansion in 1923, which increased the number of beds from 28 to 95.
The community was of high importance in the maintaining of the community, especially for the people that worked for him. He was concerned about their education, he was concerned about their health, he was concerned about how they lived. And he spent time out in the mills getting to know people. It was a very personal relationship.
Colin Jr. recruited his son-in-law Bob Millen to serve on the hospital board with him. Bob became the youngest ever board member and was also the longest serving.
He knew that he was going to be the next one to step up and carry on the family legacy and participate actively in helping Middletown and in the hospital.
Dr. David Gerber came to Middletown in 1908, practicing at the Armco Infirmary and making house calls on his bicycle. Dr. Gerber was among the first physicians to work at the new hospital. He retired in 1955, but in 1972, at age 91, he was still at work assisting his son David Jr. in the operating room.
The stories that young David would tell about after Uncle David retired, he still helped him in surgery. And he said, I let him help me in surgery. And he said, I let him sew up the patient after I'd finished, and he said it took him so long to get. He said I was just dying to get in, do it myself.
Both Grandpa and Dad would lead by example. They were soft-spoken, actually, and very calm, reassuring type personality.
The Bauer family gave Middletown another father and son physician duo, Dr. E.O. Bauer and Dr. Jack Bauer. Plans for building Middletown Hospital were already underway when Dr. E.O. Bauer opened a general medicine practice in 1911. He jumped right in to help find a location and plan the new facility, where he became the first chief of staff. He admitted the first patient to the new hospital and performed the first surgery, a successful appendectomy.
My grandfather did the first blood transfusion at the hospital, and that was state of the art at the time, back there in the 20s. So it was, it just sort of shows you that the hospital was on the leading edge of medicine.
He was very proud of the hospital and liked for it to maintain the high status that it always has had.
E.O. retired in 1953 after a lifetime of helping to set the hospital's direction. In 1947, E.O.'s son, John Bauer, known as Jack, began his solo practice in Middletown and followed in his father's footsteps, also serving in hospital leadership positions. Dr. Mabel Edith Gardner earned the right to be called doctor before she earned the right to vote. In 1914, she was a member of the first graduating class to include women at Ohio Miami Medical College, and she started her practice in Middletown in 1915.
I think it is a great honor that Dr. Mabel Gardner was the first female physician at Middletown and was part of the group that really founded the hospital. She was one of 10 female physicians in the state of Ohio at the time, and really was sort of a pathfinder for women in medicine in this part of Ohio. And that's a great legacy.
In her 50-plus years of practice, Dr. Gardner delivered more than 10,000 Middletown babies, including Sarah Kaup and Eugenie Campbell. She was the driving force behind the 1956 expansion of the hospital's obstetrics department. Dr. Gardner served as both chief of obstetrics and president of the hospital's medical staff.
When I think back to the history of Atrium Medical Center and Middletown Regional Hospital, I'm fascinated by the personality that was Mabel Gardner. As one of the founders of the original Middletown Regional Hospital, she was a woman in practice when there were almost no women practicing medicine. I personally owe a debt of gratitude to Dr. Gardner because she almost single-handedly moved the practice of obstetrics from homes around Middletown to the hospital.
Well, we were very lucky to have some very high-profile people that had the wherewithal to commit to the hospital and get it started and underway.
On February 4th, 1924, less than a decade after the hospital's opening, the Middletown Hospital School of Nursing accepted its first students into a 3-year diploma program. The school graduated 479 nurses before closing in 1972. To meet the growing need for well-trained professionals, the hospital opened the School of Radiology Technology in 1967, graduating students until 1997. The School of Laboratory Technology opened in 1968, offering its classroom and clinical program until 1996. In 2012, Green Tree Health Science Academy opened on Atrium's campus to train tomorrow's caregivers. Through the decades, the hospital continued to grow with the community it served. Hospital and community leaders envisioned new buildings, services, and technology to bring the latest developments to Middletown. Generous donors helped to keep the hospital on the leading edge of care. Charles Hook, son-in-law of George M. Verity, led a campaign for an addition that included modern operating rooms and more patient beds. In the 1950s, the hospital expanded yet again, bringing patient capacity to nearly 300 beds. The hospital board of directors made some changes in business operations. Bill Bowman, a hospital manager by profession, took over administration, a role that chiefs of staff and nursing directors had played in the past. Sadly, Bowman's life was cut short in a car accident. Walter Mishley, newly hired as an assistant administrator, assumed the top position. With him came Jim Elder, an assistant administrator who later became executive vice president.
Walt came, and I came a week later, and he never let me forget that he had seniority. he was a great guy.
The next decade saw even more expansion, remodeling, and improvements. The seeds for a world-class heart center were sown early on, with Dr. Walter Rail Jr. taking a lead role. Middletown Hospital was one of the first community hospitals in the nation to open a cardiac care unit, and the second in the area to introduce cardiac rehabilitation.
From the community standpoint, I think the major one was my developing the CPR program. And we theoretically trained 20,000 people to do CPR in Middletown.
The hospital's reputation for innovation continued to grow as surgeons performed leading-edge orthopedic procedures. Dr. Raymond Kiefaber was the first in Southwest Ohio to perform an FDA-approved total knee replacement. In the 1970s, the hospital also added an intensive care unit.
We were one of the first ones to have an intensive care unit in this whole area, and they had to send the nurses someplace for special training because this was new. And the hospital was new in a whole lot of things for this area.
A reputation for excellence attracted talented hospital employees and physicians who strengthened patient care and contributed to the community.
As a whole, the Middletown medical staff got along very well, and they socialized, and it was a closely knit group of people. And again, I think that was part of the reason we were able to attract good physicians here, is that we not only had an able medical staff, we had a medical staff that was able to get along when the chips were down.
After Walter Mishley retired, Jim Flynn was hired as hospital president and CEO. It was the early 1980s, and the climate was ripe for change. To better reflect its scope of services and expertise, the hospital changed its name. Middletown Regional Hospital continued to modernize and expand its services.
We really were family, I think, and the fact that so many of the people involved with those businesses and economic forces were part of us and came to serve in one capacity or another, just tended to solidify that idea of family.
In the mid-1980s, Wilbur Cohen, hospital board chair, along with Jim Flynn and Jim Elder, collaborated to start the Hospital Foundation to raise funds for new services and technology. They recruited Dick Slagle, then an Armco executive, as the first board chair. Dick's energy and dedication were key to the foundation's early success.
I think it was a matter of getting some nickels together to add to what the income the hospital could have and the potential the hospital had to provide for any future needs that the hospital might have and have funds for that. But in no way did we envision that they would grow to the extent it is now.
Doug McNeil became president and CEO of Middletown Regional Hospital in 1991. His tenure brought more dramatic change with additions, awards, and partnerships that reflected the hospital's rich legacy, including cardiology, surgery, trauma, senior services, and employee child care.
Well, I think the commitment to the community and our close
partnership with Armco and the ability to provide service not only to Middletown Works, but to the greater regional area is without question, I think, one of the things I felt most proud about in terms of the service it provided to the community.
As the new millennium approached, major change was needed to secure the hospital's future. It was becoming clear that no more growth was possible because the hospital was landlocked in a residential neighborhood. The hospital board, along with civic and business leaders, began to plan a strategically located campus where the hospital could grow and attract new partners, as well as create a better experience for patients. As the journey began toward Atrium Medical Center, Southwest Ohio's businesses and citizens focused on raising funds for the facility's new heart center. With support from Premier Health, Atrium Medical Center opened in December of 2007. Its 190-acre campus is home to partners in education, specialized care, and wellness.
The next hire we did internally, and that was Carol Turner, who was a very competent clinical director of laboratory. And a position came open, Vice President of Operations, and her name was advanced and she was vetted, and it turned out to be she was the one, and I think that proves out, if we look at today, to be a very wise choice.
In 2011, Carol Turner became the hospital's first female president and CEO. Atrium's commitment to compassionate, high-quality care for patients and their families begins with Carol's leadership and is brought to life every day by hospital employees, physicians, and volunteers. Going into the future, the familiar theme of expansion to best serve patients is more important than ever. Recently, the hospital launched a mammography coach with 3D scanning ability and opened new facilities in Mason and Trenton to bring healthcare to where people live, work, and play. Through the years, hospital leaders did not forget that fun and laughter are often the best medicine. As its first citywide project, the Middletown Federation of Women's Clubs organized the 1921 Charity Ball. Over the course of 95 years, the Charity Ball has raised more than $1 million. These funds have helped the hospital support new programs, construction, and equipment. From 1965 to 2000, the auxiliary presented the popular High Fever Follies, an amateur variety show, with the cast composed of auxiliary members, doctors, nurses, hospital staff, volunteers, and Middletown citizens. To celebrate the next era in care, Atrium Medical Center Foundation launched its first triennial gala in 2007 as the new hospital was nearing completion. These joyous celebrations have supported major projects like the Heart Center, cancer care, and neuroscience services, and this year, senior-friendly emergency services. What would the hospital's founders think about progress and patient care at Atrium Medical Center today?
You know, reaching 100 years is an amazing milestone. There are many Fortune 500 companies who haven't achieved that. Some aren't around anymore, but Atrium has, and I think it's a testament to the character and the quality of people who reside, again, in that area, in that community, in that medical center.
I know they would be delighted. I think they would be absolutely amazed at how a small dream of putting that hospital on the hill has grown into the complex that it's grown into today.
I think that, or at least I would hope that they would find that the mission hasn't changed at all, that the hospital that they established is still taking care of their community. And as we move forward, I still see us accomplishing that mission by getting further into community health.
First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on 100 years of an extremely rich history.
both as first starting out as a integral part of the Middletown community, certainly been an anchor in that community for all of those years, and now as such a very important part of Premier Health. So congratulations, and we couldn't be more thrilled that you're part of our system.
And I would echo that. You said it very well. So few organizations can speak of a 100-year history. That's remarkable in itself. And I just would congratulate the board on their vision, their ability to look ahead and make the decisions they did, and the staff, physicians, volunteers, everyone who's been there throughout its history. And the one common theme is their excellence in terms of what they give patients in the community.
I think the culture at Middletown and now at Atrium is one of more of a small hospital feel. We have the technology and the programming of a bigger hospital, but many people have spent their entire career there. They were born at Middletown, and they came back after college to work there. So there's a real feel of family and support and closeness across Atrium. I hope that's something that we never lose.